I think we lost Carolyn.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very unfortunate thing. There's a lot of discourse online with Bonta not making it because he won the players. So should he be in? But USBC rules are for last year's winners, not this current year's. The field is already set a little bit too much, and there's a lot of hit or miss on that. So very unfortunate that Bonta and Petrin weren't able to get into the main field. But Robarge, I don't think made the cut the way it looked. A lot of lefties surged yesterday on the plastic day, but Robarge wasn't one of them. So he ended up not making the cut anyway.
Yeah, I know. I saw that as well, but at least my pick made it out of the PTQs. So
Yes, true. Yeah, I do have a couple of updates. I have somebody on my ZVL Discord keeping crazy cool stats for us, so I want to go through a couple of them. The number of righties that made match play was 31, with 12 of them being two-handers and 5 of them being lefties. 3 of those lefties being two-handers. Otherwise, we had our leader, Michael Davidson, at 557 over, top 36, Bailey Maverick and TJ Rock at plus
Never
209.
have.
I want to jump over down to day 2.
Hey, wait, I'm on a podcast here.
And moving on to day 2, we had previously we only had we had 34 righties and 2 lefties. So we saw a little surge in the lefties compared to what we saw on day 2. So a little bit interesting there, but as a lot of people saw, it was all plastic yesterday. So that was a big reason for it.
Yeah, I'm going to be. I was talking to AJ yesterday on chat, or actually via text, and he's going to call me back here after this block. But I'm speaking about AJ Johnson. He's bowling really, really well. It's nice to see that. And so I was hoping to get an update from him, before we went on the show here today, just to get some kind of feedback of some of the things that he's seen, he's learning, and kind of just again get it from the player's perspective. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to reach him ahead of time for the show. So I see we have Carolyn back. Carolyn, go ahead. The back to you now.
It's kind of crazy here because I got people walking in and kind of chit chatting away. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
You can?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And coming in to hug me. So I'm, this could go anyway today. But let's get into the other subject we wanted to touch base on. Will the PBA, do you think, throw a couple of events in there, maybe even later in the year? Let's talk a little bit about string pins, because there's been a lot of research on string pins, and a couple things I just want to mention, and I'll throw it to Jay first. They're faster, more efficient, cheaper, easier maintenance, 75% less energy on string pins. But there is that 3.4 lower scoring pace. Where do we think it's headed, and do we think PBA bowling will follow?
Okay. And I have a strong opinion on string pins. All right. So I'm going to preface it by saying, if you're and so I'm going to try and make it short if I can here, but it's hard to. So if you are a lover of the sport of bowling, forget being a purist, forget anything else. If you love the sport of bowling, you must adopt the concept of string pins. And I say that because in string pins, the things that you just mentioned are not only going to, I don't want to say save, because I don't think bowling needs to be saved. I think it's going to expand the footprint of it. And here's why I say that. I don't care if you're a theoretical purist, right? If that's the case, then go back to bowling with rubber balls on wood lanes with pin boys. Okay, you have adapted and adopted to technology through the years to where you have accepted urethane, you're throwing on resin, you're throwing on, synthetic lanes, you're using all the things to this point. So what is wrong with one more evolution of the game? That's all this is. It's an evolution of the sport. And if you love it and you like our sport, yes, you have to adapt to that, because again, it is going to allow centers to maybe open up, because getting a mechanic to run these A2 machines, these older machines, they're just not, it's a lost art, right? So we have to adapt and adopt to this technology in order for us to accept it. Do I like free fall better? Yes, I'm going to say that. Yes, I do like it better. That we have to do this because I love bowling more than I care about how a pin fell over. There it is. There's my strong opinion. Zach, how about you?
Yeah, I really think PBA dropped the ball on this one. I think that one telecast we had with the strike derby and the one hand versus two hand on string pin put string pin in such a terrible light, because I bowled on string pins a handful of times in different places across the country, and a lot of them are not bad. I probably bowled about 10 to 15 games on string so far, and I haven't had any of the weird situations that we saw on that PBA telecast. And they've really improved over the last year or two because they've had to gain popularity. The big problem with it is, like you said, the machine parts, the mechanics, everything with free fall is just very expensive, and bowling is not a game that gets a ton of money for the bowling centers. So to be able to keep up with it, you got to find a different way to be able to save some dollars, especially for the mom and pop centers. And that's where string pins really came into play. I remember when I was with someone in Michigan, I was talking to them. They just put in string pins and they said, how many engines do you think, or how many motors do you think it takes to run this 24 lane center? I was like, I don't know, maybe 10, maybe for those 24 machines. He said one. We now have two motors compared to having one on every single lane, because they just take so much less. Our electricity bill is so much lower. It did save us so much money to be able to put towards things that are actually going to benefit the building. So it's a very hard game. I understand the side that sees, well, there's all these weird things happening with string pins because they got off on such a bad footing. I remember a PBA regional event like maybe 3 or 4 years ago in Florida. It was terrible. Every 2, 8, 10 people were picking up because strings would just get mixed around. But that is not really the case with a lot of these certified machines anymore. So we started on such a bad footing. I think once it's more in the public light and in actual centers where it's certified, it might look a lot better.
I think your comment is exactly right. And I take a word out of there, one specific word, certified. Now, there are recreational type, and then there are competition strings, right? And the difference really comes down to the length of the string, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Now, when you get into the competition side, you might see a little bit of difference, but it is so minuscule that you're really not going to notice. Now, where I will say this though, it is a bit of it kind of evens things out, right? One of the things you don't see as often with strings are the flying messengers that you do on free fall. So if you're a one-hander going up against the two-handers that have a billion revs, it kind of evens that playing field out a little bit, because it really puts a premium on entry angle. So again, you need to be more of a shot maker than just a throw it and rip the cover off the ball. Because most of your messengers are going to fly. I don't know why or how it happens, but they fly in front of the corner pins, like whether it be the 10 or the 7 pin. Again, it does fly. Those messengers fly in front of. So do you get some difference? Maybe, but it's all made up. And the thing is, you're all playing on the same conditions. So it's not like one pair you're on free fall and the next pair you're on string pins. You're all playing on the same thing. Okay. And so I personally have played quite a bit on string pins, and I don't mind them. I don't mind them. So do I prefer free fall? Yeah. Roll the sport. You got to adapt to the string pins.
I think that's one piece that a lot of people don't really see in the game is the drop of score. USBC posted an awesome survey, or not survey, research report about it, and they said an average of about 3 to 4 pins was being dropped. So that 3 to 4 pin drop is very it should help one-handers a lot more. Like you said, messengers are not hitting as much. You're not getting those weird hits, those trip twos because of rev rate. The string pins really kind of even the rev rate field. So if you're not a fan of the power game and how bowling has turned into more of a power game, you generally would be a fan of string pin.
Yeah, I agree with you, and like I said, I've bowled, and in fact, I'm going to be bowling on a string pin tournament here. Not next week, the 14th or something like that. That weekend in Williston, North Dakota. They were the first in the state to to change their entire house over. I think it's 24 lanes to all strings, and yeah, they went through some. and some blowback from, some of your purists again. But now that people are used to it, I don't think anybody has balked at all. And their tournaments get just as many people now. But again, for those listening, think of it as it's another evolution in the sport. It really is. And if you're throwing synthetic lanes, or you're throwing a reactive ball, it's honestly, it's no different. It's just another step in how our sport has evolved and will continue to evolve. I don't know where the next thing is going to go, but again, I just keep saying this. If you think about how we need to have more centers, the number of centers has gone from 12,000, I think is what it was in the late 90s, at the peak of when bowling was, and now we're down to like 3,900. The economics behind it just don't warrant opening another center because of the labor involved. Now, strings changes the economic model exponentially. So who knows? Maybe we see more centers opening up as family entertainment centers, but it still puts people in the sport of bowling. So anyway, so I that's my opinion, Zach, and I don't know if you have heard others share an opinion that strongly, but I do have a strong one on it.
Here's a fun question for you. Do you see string pin machines improving over the next few years? We've seen a big rise in popularity. They're getting put in more and more in the last couple of years than ever before to try to save some of these centers for cost-saving methods, whatever it may be. Do you think that we're going to see more improved machines coming out? Brunswick, AMF, they're going to maybe have improvements that they can put onto these machines.
Great question. And then what I'd tell you is true in any type of, economic, again, model. People are going to buy what is the best, or gives their center the best reputation. So yes, naturally, it becomes like anything else. The cream will rise to the top, and you hear me say that often on the show here. And if you produce a better product, you're going to get more customers. I mean, that's just open market and free market, system. So yes, of course I do. Now, to the ones that are in place, are they going to go change out? No, well, no, you can't. But I would imagine even retrofitting existing centers with different strings, different string lengths, whatever it might be, they're going to come up with ways to improve and get more consistent with free fall, even for retrofitting. I just can't imagine that not being the case.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. That's kind of where I'm thinking of right now, because whenever something rises in popularity like that, you generally see a lot of companies trying to one up each other to be the top dog. And I could see, with there being rival companies right now in the string pin game, you're probably going to see some crazy improvements on how can we mimic free fall? How can we make this as good as possible? So yeah, will it be, I don't very little about the true mechanics behind a string pin machine, but are we going to see some of those crazy differences? Are we going to see new string lengths? Just little tweaks to the machine, like little miniature updates more than anything, because on free fall, you really can't make those updates in any way. You just kind of maintain. But for string pin, maybe there's a possibility where minor updates can be made to make them better and better. Who knows? And well, I do want to go. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
No. Go ahead. I was going to make a comment about the strings themselves. So yeah, as I mentioned, on competition and casual strings, there's different string lengths. Okay. And again, they've even how the strings attach to the pin itself. Right. So those are all things that will continuously evolve over time. But I don't think there's any way to deny the fact that if we want the game to grow, think of how much goes into, and I don't remember the number of moving parts, but it's something like 4,000 or some crazy amount of moving parts that are sitting in one A2 machine, right? or an equivalent to an A2. Now, finding a mechanic to manage a center with that many, machines and moving parts, but additionally, finding parts simply is a challenge. So these machines, for the most part, are sometimes 50, 60, 70 years old. Yeah, they're workhorses and they'll run forever if you keep them up. The point is keeping them up. That's the challenge. And it's the cost to doing that. So if you're tired of your machines breaking down and getting your ball jammed, that's a function of a machine. It happens, right? So now what I will say is one of the things that you're going to give up, but you don't get with the free fall, and they'll improve over time, are the strings tangled. That is a pain in the butt. For those that have bowled tournaments or whatever, it does happen, not necessarily often, but it's similar to a deck jam or something like that in the free fall, is your strings get tangled. And the machine will sometimes get them untangled on its own, but every once in a while you'll have to send someone down there to get the strings untangled. That again is just kind of a function of strings. So have you had a chance to bowl on them a lot, Zach? I think you said you only bowled 15 times or something like that.
Yeah, about 10 to 15-ish games. When I was in Michigan for a couple of events, I was able to bowl on a handful of them, and it was fun to be able to pick the brain of one of the head guys at one of the bowling centers. So, for a little bit of a personal story, my home center right now is hosting the Minnesota State tournament, and we've spent 2, 3, 4 years trying to get our A2s up to snuff because there's just always breakdown after breakdown after breakdown. They've spent tens of thousands on different mechanics, different parts. It's the amount of money that has been put into these machines was eye-opening so far. I cannot believe how much money, how much power, like hours and power has been spent just trying to get these machines to a working state. And it's at an okay spot now, but they are like on a razor blade right now. Like if one of them breaks down, it might be down for a while because of just how many issues can arise. So it's really been eye-opening then talking to the mechanics there, and they said, yeah, these machines are great. We have a tangle that somebody behind the desk can fix. Otherwise, you don't need a mechanic doing anything. If the motor blows, we have a second one on standby because we didn't need 24 of them like we had in our last center. So it was very eye-opening to learn a lot more about string pins. And I'm curious to see how many more centers added in the next couple of years.
I hope that the bowlers, not necessarily the centers, the people like you and me and the average league bowler, changes our perception. And that's where it has to start. Hey, some people say, if you convert to pins, I'm done. I won't come back. I would say, guys, come on. You have to enter into things like this with a bit of more of an open mind and understand it from a lot of different perspectives. Understand it from the center, from the operator's perception or perspective, rather. The bowling centers. Think about the economics behind it from their perspective. If we don't make moves like this, how long can we stay open? And if it's not open, then nobody gets to bowl. Right. So, and again, opening more centers. Does this change the landscape so more people and more business opportunities come open because it improves financials so drastically? So again, I just ask you to enter into this with more of an open mind, and it places a premium. No, and again, I want to say this. If we're before, and I understand it because I'm 56 years old, I'm not a spring chicken. I can't put the revs on it that these young two-handers do. It kind of balances things out a little bit. So it's, again, think about it from the perspective of, competition. Fairs, it adds a premium on shot making. So enter into these things with more of an open mind, as I think, again, well, I know from my perspective, again, bowling on them, it's a little bit different. But you need to pay more premium on accuracy and more premium on entry angle. So anyway, those, and again, I say this, I have a very strong opinion about it because I want the game to survive.
Absolutely. I want to shift it a little bit to something with the U.S. Open that just happened. Is Pat McAfee, one of the biggest influential names in the sport, went to the U.S. Open and hung out for a while. So what do you know about that situation? What do you know about him jumping in, in Indianapolis, going to the bowling center, going to Woodland and hanging out for a little bit?
Honestly, I don't know anything. I was going to find out. I was going to ask AJ about that. Again, one of the questions I was going to ask him before the show, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk to him. But man, I tell you what, that can't do anything but put a great light on the sport. To have, like you said, one of the biggest names in sports, with the biggest podcast, I think, in pretty much next to Joe Rogan, put a spotlight on bowling like he did. Man, how can that not be anything but awesome? No, I unfortunately don't know anything about it.
Okay. Yeah, from what I've seen, he pushed Mike Flanagan a lot. Like he mentioned Flanagan a ton in a lot of his things. So I don't know if there was a connection there or whatever it may be. But PBA pushed pretty hard, like because he mentioned, oh, the U.S. Open is in Indianapolis, where I am right now in my hometown. And Bonta with PBA put out something on Instagram. Then a couple other more people started pushing for McAfee, and then he posted a video of him driving there, showing up and walking around a little bit, which was a really cool thing. I don't think he hopped in the Bowl TV booth or anything like that. Probably did some pictures, did some signings, and then left. But still really cool because bowling it's always tough for bowling to get into the national limelight like that. Like getting into the realm of baseball, basketball, football is not an easy thing to do. And it's not just bowling that deals with that. Golf deals with it as well. Other sports hockey deals with it even to this point. So really cool to see that bowling actually got brought up, and he put a little bit of a limelight on it. He brought up EJ Tackett about 30 times in some of his videos because he's a close native to the area, and the back-to-back player of the year always helps. So no, that was a really cool thing for bowling to see, that somebody that influential was able to actually step into the game. It kind of reminded me of like when Mookie first got into it.
Yeah.
Like that was a time where people were just head over heels because wow, that is the biggest baseball name in the world at the time, is actually a phenomenal bowler and loves bowling, which was super cool. So this is very cool to see. Hopefully there's a little more that can happen now, especially with the new CEO of the PBA. Maybe he can make some connections to try to make more things like this happen. It'd be really good for bowling, which is similar to the HBO documentary, which we might bring up next week, Born to Bowl, which I am a firm believer is the greatest thing to happen to bowling in like the last 5 years. But we can talk about that next week because we're running out of time today.
Yeah, before we jump off, I want to say this as well, if you can, and I know, Zach, you signed up, the Agent Ong tournament in October. And it's Agent ONG. So Agent Ong, again, ONG tournament. Make sure if you can, check it out. They do just an awesome job. Carl puts on an incredible tournament. It moved from Phoenix to Las Vegas. Some of the biggest names out there. It's a really cool amateur tournament, but yet you'll see some really big names. Sign up for it. You'll have a blast. And I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Farmers Union Insurance for, again, working with us here. I want to welcome Malia Briggs to the team. That's a really cool addition to Bowlers Network. So check out Malia Briggs. And of course, I got to put a plug in for my buddy, ZVL Bowling, right? ZVL Bowling. Make sure you go to his channel. Zach, you do some awesome, awesome work. Do us all a favor, though, please. Like and subscribe not only to our YouTube channel, share it out. What we're trying to do here is grow the sport. We're trying to put light on some, people and topics that we all love. So go to Facebook, go to Instagram, like and share ZVL Bowling as well as what you see here. So, well, hopefully Carolyn is going to get her technology figured out again. She unfortunately lost her internet. So we'll see her on Monday and see you all back on Monday at noon Central.